Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
One, two. Check me out right here, yo.
Yo, the sun don't shine for
Welcome into the Bob Sullivan Show here on latenightsportsradio.com. If you'd like to call in, the call-in number is 585-633-7487. Big show tonight. To kick it off, we got Josh Greenberg of LastWordOnSports.com. Josh, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Just enjoying some nice, the annual NBA playoff thunderstorm/tornado watches that we're getting here in Omaha that require local weathermen to interrupt games on ABC on local television and ruin everything. That's what I'm.
Don't you love that?
It just ruins my night every time. Every year it ruins it. Do you ever have to deal with?
If there's a tornado, right? You just want to watch the playoffs.
There was a time when I was about 10 when there was a legitimate tornado warning, and I chose to gut it out in the family room instead of going into safety to try to find some NBA coverage. So I'm that dumb and that dedicated to the NBA that I'm willing to die for it in a tornado.
You know what? What's the likelihood that you're going to get hit by the tornado anyway? Really?
I think it's like the likelihood. I think I have a better chance at winning the lottery twice. So,
right.
I'm going to take.
Might as well watch the playoffs.
Exactly. They only come around so often.
Right.
With the Major League Baseball right now, looking around with the Red Sox starting off 8-9 here, a little bit, some patchy work here other than David Price. What do you think so far of the Red Sox, the moves they've made, Kung Fu Panda? What is your opinion on the Red Sox right now?
Well, actually, even David Price hasn't been that good. His two starts at home have been fairly awful. The only starter they've had that's been consistent is Stephen Wright, who's the knuckleballer, their number 5 starter, who really only got a rotation spot because Eduardo Rodriguez had to start the year on the DL. But he's really made a case for himself sticking in the rotation after he gets back, and I have a feeling that's going to happen. But as for their other moves, acquiring Price, obviously, I think that's going to work out. He usually starts slow in April. Kimbrel has been a little patchy, but I think he's going to work out. Carson Smith, we'll see when he gets back from the disabled list. When that happens fairly soon, I think in the next few weeks that should happen. But I really think that they haven't done enough with their pitching staff. I mean, I don't find it credible to believe that the front office thought that 2-3 pitchers was enough to fix the problems they had. I don't think David Price alone is enough to fix the rotation. I don't think Craig Kimbrel alone is enough to fix the bullpen. But maybe, I don't know if they did believe that. That's kind of naive of them. I don't know if they expected the fans to believe that. I know some probably bought into it. I mean, it's hard to not with big-name signings like that sometimes. And I kind of thought that Kimbrel and Smith would really do a lot to help the bullpen, even though that hasn't really been the case so far. But I don't think that Price and Kimbrel, once they're pitching it like they can, even then I don't think that they'll really be enough to fix the problems they had there. As for Panda, that's a whole separate issue. I don't even know what to think there. I mean, eventually, I honestly think it worked out for the Red Sox because you've got Travis Shaw starting at third base now, and he's been fantastic. I mean, he's hitting 326 and he's 345, and he's playing a fantastic third base for a guy that, first of all, is a natural first baseman, and second of all, many people believed was not even worthy of being a major league player. So, I mean, I think the Red Sox eventually got the right player there, but unfortunately they're wasting $95 million on the disabled list right now. And as for that, I don't even know. Pablo's injury, his shoulder injury, apparently he just woke up one day could barely move his shoulder and maybe needs surgery. I don't entirely buy that. I don't really think you suddenly wake up with a shoulder injury that needs surgery very often. It seems less than credible to me.
With the Red Sox, the last time they made some off-season mistakes, whether it be Adrian Gonzalez and Carl Crawford, and how much you want to call those huge mistakes, they got bailed out by the Dodgers.
Right.
Well, take all that money off their books. Or the Reds, you thought I thought the Red Sox would make a better decision after that whole mess, and then recovering.
Both.
How are they going to recover from these two? Like, Hanley hasn't been that great either, and he's really kind of positionless right now. And what do you think they're going to do going forward with kind of these bad contracts? Hope the Dodgers bail them out.
As with Hanley, it actually looks like he might be working out at first base. I mean, from all accounts, he acts and looks like a different player. He's happier now. He seems to be under less pressure. He's got more energy. He's got more enthusiasm. It seems like the move to first base is really working out for him. He's hitting pretty well. He was hitting pretty decently to start the game. He's in a bit of a slump right now, but he was hitting pretty decently the first couple weeks of the season. And he really just seems like he has a lot more energy and enthusiasm for the game. So I really think the move to first base will work out for him. I mean, if it doesn't, obviously, then the Red Sox have another decision to make. But for the time being, it really looks like they found a home for him. As for Pablo, I mean, I really don't know. Even if he comes back from the disabled list slimmer, in better shape, which, is a big if. I mean, how do you displace Travis Shaw unless he starts getting into a horrible slump that it looks like he's never going to get out of? But I mean, right now he's hitting 345. He's slugging 517. And he's playing fantastic defense, again, for a natural first baseman at third base. I mean, I don't know how you just displace that. Even though, I mean, I know Pablo's contract is $95 million for 5 years, but I don't think you can take Travis Shaw. He's the best chance you have to win playing in at third base. So I don't really know what they're going to do with his contract. I think eventually they're going to have to find someone to trade with, and I think that they're probably going to have to eat a lot of his contract, maybe all of it even. And luckily for the Red Sox, they're one of the few teams in the league that can actually afford to do that, although it would certainly hurt them. But I don't really see many other options that they have with Pablo right now. I mean, it just doesn't seem like even if he comes back in better shape, he's not going to have a home.
The Yankees, it seems like, ever since the last A-Rod deal, it's not like they haven't, the last A-Rod to share a deal, they haven't necessarily not gone out, like they've gone after Cliff Lee. They've gone after, big names on the free agent market. They've struck out. But it seems like they're kind of getting, smarter with how they're spending their money. It's not showing in their record right now, but, spending money on, setup guys, closer, spending money in, on defensive guys, spending money in the right places, smart money, until they can maybe get a Bryce Harper or whoever it may be. Are you surprised that, the Red Sox are still kind of haven't learned from past mistakes, and the Yankees, I think, have gradually started to learn from their past mistakes in past years? When do you think the Red Sox are going to finally kind of figure that out?
I think that probably this is the season that finally taught them the lesson. I think that Pablo's weight issues and injury has finally maybe taught them the lesson, because in the past they would have made these bad decisions on these contracts and then still insisted on playing these guys. But now at least they're admitting that, okay, even though these guys have the contracts, Pablo has the contract, he is not the best option. He doesn't give us the best chance to win, so we're going to start the guy who, nobody's heard of. He doesn't have the money, but he gives us the better chance to win. So I think that they're finally maybe starting to learn. I mean, we'll see when this offseason comes up if Pablo still hasn't done anything. We'll see what they do with him. I think that'll really tell us whether they have learned anything. But I think that they're finally starting to understand that just because someone has a big name, just because someone has had a strong performance in the postseason, you can't just look at that. You have to look at how they performed over their entire careers. And, Pablo is, he's always had weight issues, and he's been good in the postseason, but he's always been a very, very, very streaky hitter. And I don't think that they should have given someone like that a 5-year, $95 million contract. I mean, that just seems like way too risky. And I think that they're probably realizing that. And I think you're exactly right about the Yankees. They've definitely learned their lesson, and they're definitely, they were one of the few, I think the only team that didn't sign anyone to a major league contract this offseason, which is so un-Yankee-like. And they're definitely setting up for that 2018 class where Bryce Harper and a bunch of other guys are going to be free agents.
Looking around the rest of the American League right now, Chicago White Sox are off to a great start. The Royals, not a huge surprise that they're off to a great start. Right. With the White Sox, how long do you think this can last? And at what point do they need to bring back Drake LaRoche for this to work?
I don't know that they need to bring back Drake LaRoche. I mean, Adam was nearing the end of his career anyways. I don't really like the way they handled that situation, but Adam LaRoche wasn't going to be a huge part of their success or lack of success anyway. So, but, I don't know how long this can last. The thing is, I mean, they're really riding great pitching right now. Which is kind of surprising because their hitting is, fairly mediocre. They're tied for 26th in the league in runs scored. They're they're 28th in the league in batting average. They're 28th in the league in slugging percentage. But then you look at their pitching staff. They're second in the league in earned run average. They're second in quality starts. They're second in WHIP, and they're first in batting average against. And I think that the biggest surprise on that front is Matt Latos, who has really so far had a bounce-back season. He's 4-0, 13 strikeouts, a 0.74 ERA. And, that's probably not sustainable over the course of the season, but I don't think anyone ever expected him to start out even that good. Yeah. I mean, even your best projections probably wouldn't have seen that. So it really depends on how long their pitching staff can keep going. And, they've got some good pitchers, so they could probably, ride this for a good while, I think. Do I think that they'll end up beating out Kansas City? No, I definitely don't. And I think that Detroit will be better than they've been so far. But I think that the White Sox may have a decent shot at a wild card if their pitching stays, at the level it's been at.
Looking at the Royals, they're not the last 3 years, well, this year included, the last 2.5, not been the most talented offensively, not hitting a bunch of home runs, not the greatest pitching staff in the world, but they're good in the bullpen, good defensively, and Ned Yost likes to take risks in a lot of situations that would not be called calculated risks. They would be called stupid risks. And
right.
More often than not, those have benefited, them in the last couple of years. Is this team, going into this season, like it didn't seem like a lot of people were buying into another run for this team. At what point is anybody ever going to buy too much into this team or too much into Ned Yost, or are they just always going to be this kind of forgotten angel out there?
I don't think that anyone's ever going to give them, as long as they continue playing the type of baseball they're playing, I don't think that anyone's ever going to hype them too much because they're just, on paper anyways, not exciting. When people always make the projections of who they're buying into, who they're not getting into, that's in the offseason, and that's when you have to look at teams on paper. And on paper, they're not very exciting, you're right. But they just play solid baseball. They have guys who get on base. They don't have home run hitters for sure, but they have guys who get on base. They don't have, the ace, the strikeout guy, the huge, the shutdown guy on their pitching staff, but they have solid starters. And then they have a shutdown bullpen. And a lot of people don't, the bullpen, I think, is an underrated unit as far as in all of baseball is concerned. People like to see the front end starter, people like to see the home run hitter, but people still don't really look at the bullpen as, the asset to have for a team. But as long as they play great defense, they have a great bullpen, which means that if they get a lead late into the games, they're probably going to win a game. And as long as they keep producing runs like they have, they're probably going to be a solid team. Mm-hmm. But, I think that now is probably the time to realize that they're going to be a contender for some time. But I don't think anyone's going to ever really give them the hype that teams that make bigger acquisitions are going to have.
Where do you stand as far as this whole? I mean, it's not new age. Well, it is new age as far as the time span, but in the last 10, 15 years, it's become, all right, we're going to play for the big inning. We're not going to, we're not going to bunt. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. And the team that's, in the last 2 years that's been successful is not the team that plays for the huge inning. It's the team that, is willing to bunt with a 3-hole hitter or bunt with when it doesn't make sense, or steal when it doesn't make sense. And, not necessarily, they're not playing old school and they're not playing new school. They're playing right in the middle. And that's the team that's been the most successful in the last 2 years is the Kansas City Royals. What do you think? Is there anything to take away from this that other teams, whether it be NFL or NBA, those are copycat leagues. Is there something that teams can copy that, can be successful for other organizations? Or do you think this is kind of a special situation that we're dealing with Kansas City?
I think it's kind of a special situation. I mean, they are playing something in between small ball and home run ball, which, you can copy. You just bunt sometimes. You go for the big hit sometimes. So in theory, you can copy that style, but the way that Ned Yost makes decisions, I mean, I think that's really what gives him the edge. I don't know what his thought process is most of the time, but just the way he sees the game seems to be different than most or any other manager sees the game. And I think unless you can figure out what his thought process is, it's hard to really copy what the Royals are doing. You can copy the shutdown bullpen for sure, and I think that many teams have tried to do that. The Yankees tried to. Obviously, that hasn't worked out yet with a couple of their relievers on the DL, one obviously suspended, the big one. The Red Sox, I think, tried to do that with getting Kimbrel and Carson Smith. But I think that until you can copy Ned Yost's thought process, which probably not possible, we're not going to see another team really be able to employ the Royals' style of play exactly as they do it, or maybe even really close. I'm actually, I've always been an American League guy, so I've been a fan of the big inning, getting the home run, a bunch of home run hitters in your lineup. But the way that he plays, Ned Yost, and has his team playing the game is just, it's going to be hard to beat and it's going to be hard to copy until maybe someone will figure it out someday. But I don't see it.
He almost feels like the Michael Scott from The Office of Major League Baseball, where he does so many stupid things that when he does do a smart thing, he doesn't get credit for it. Like, if you ever watch The Office, he does all this laundry list of stupid things, but when he finally proves himself, out there like actually making a sale, you're like, wow, did Michael Scott actually do that? And that's the thing with Ned Yost. It's like, oh my God, did Ned Yost actually make do something smart here? And we were just calling it stupid all this whole time.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. A lot of his decisions don't make sense at the time. Then over the course of the season, I guess, or over the course of, like Michael Scott, over the course of a season of the show, it ends up like he was really doing something that made a lot of sense over the long run.
With the couple more things before I let you get out of here. With the looking at the Chicago Cubs, is there a better manager to be running a young team that has expectations than Joe Madden right now in the major leagues?
I couldn't. If there was, I don't know who he is. I mean, Madden he's the kind of guy who, he's got his own big personality, so he's not going to be overshadowed by the big young personalities that he has on his team. And he also, because he knows how to deal with his own personality, he knows how to deal with the personalities that he has to manage. And I think that he's able to relate with these young players so well that it lets him get the best out of them so quickly. And I really think that he is the perfect manager. I mean, I don't know a manager that meshes so well with his team as Joe Madden and the Cubs. There's just no other match in the league that's that good.
I think that politicians, whether it be Mitt Romney from, about 8 years ago when he was on the campaign trail trying to pander to voters, talking, doing who let the dogs out, or, these older politicians, I think they need to hire Joe Madden as an advisor on how to be able to connect with the youth, be an older person connecting with the youth. And I think, that could greatly benefit I guess Trump's a little different, but, whether it be a Hillary or Ted Cruz, whoever it may be, I think these older politicians need to get Joe Madden as an advisor on their campaign.
Oh, he'd be great for them. Why don't we just skip the whole thing, have Joe Madden run for president?
I would actually not mind that. Could you imagine a 3-person debate between him, Bernie Sanders, and Donald Trump? I mean, that's must-see television.
He'd kill it. He would kill it, I think. But that would be fantastic television. You're absolutely right.
All right. Worst team in baseball right now that you would be fine with never watching another game of theirs this year right now?
Man, probably, and I hate to say it because they actually beat my Red Sox a couple of games, but I'd say the Tampa Bay Rays because they just cannot hit. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, Evan Longoria is just wasting away in that lineup. He's got no one around him to protect him. They just cannot hit at all. And they've got decent pitchers in theory. Chris Archer hasn't been that good, but I mean, they just can't hit. It's so hard to watch their lineup go through a game.
Team that's kind of on the fringe that would be worth putting money on to make the World Series.
That's a tough one. Even though the Baltimore Orioles are leading the AL East right now, I'd still put them on the fringe because I don't really believe in their pitching staff over the long run, and I don't believe that their hitting is going to be consistent enough. It's that they have a bunch of streaky hitters, but they hit so well and they can go on such power streaks that I think that they have a decent shot at not only winning the AL East, but at least getting to the World Series. If not winning, if their pitching can keep the runs to whatever a minimum for them would be, then I think that they could do it.
Bet the best team with a good record that you're not buying right now.
Well, I'm going to have to go with
other than the White Sox.
Other than the White Sox?
Yeah.
Okay. It hurts me to say it because I have a lot of A's fans who are friends, but I'm gonna have to go with the Oakland A's. I mean, they're first in the AL West right now. I mean, they're only 10-9, only one game over 500, but I mean that team just isn't that good. I mean, they were last I checked they were undefeated on the road. I don't know if they still are, but no, they're not because they were playing the Blue Jays, but. Yeah, they're just not as good as they've been playing, I don't think. I'm just not buying the Oakland A's. They're not going to win that division. I think that the Astros are going to figure out whatever the funk that they're in is. They're going to figure that out, and they're going to end up winning that division. Either that or it'll be the Rangers, but the A's just aren't that good.
They're going to do what they used to do when they were in the NL Central, when they'd have a horrible start to the year and then have a great June and then ride that out through the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So. All right. Last question before I let you go. Actually, last question before I ask you for your information. Okay, so there used to be a show, I'm sure you remember it, Pros versus Joes on Spike. Did you ever watch that show?
I don't believe I did. I've heard of it, but I don't believe I ever watched it. Or maybe I only saw an episode or two.
It was a reality show where Dennis Rodman would make free throws against different...
yeah, I remember this. Yeah, I saw a couple episodes.
All right, so we're going to go Pros versus Josh Greenberg.
Oh, boy.
Who is a current pitcher in the major leagues that you think if you had a strike versus strike contest that you could beat? Like if you were throwing, you're throwing 60 feet, 6 inches, and you had 5 pitches each. Do you think you could throw more strikes then?
Can I just pick from my Red Sox? Do you mind?
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, actually.
Oh, Joe Kelly then. That guy, He's got all the strikeout potential in the world, but he cannot hit the strike zone. I believe I could hit the strike zone more times in a row than he could. I cannot throw as hard for sure. I can't throw as many pitches, but I can hit the strike zone more than he can.
And who is an umpire that you would go after, like that you wouldn't fear saying something wrong to? Like when you go out, like you're the manager, the umpire makes a bad call, and you would just empty the bucket on him. Just every bad word you could possibly say, everything that nasty you could say. What umpire would it be?
Oh, there's a lot. There's definitely I'm gonna have to go. I don't know, man. That's a really tough question. There's just so many that I have a lot of problems with. Mm-hmm. Jerry Meals is probably one that I have a pretty big issue with. His strike zone is not the best. Probably Jerry Meals.
All right, Josh. Well, before I let you go, do you want to tell everybody where we can find you on Twitter, the internets, all that good stuff?
Yeah, for sure. You can find me on Twitter at my handle is lastwordjberg. And you can find my stuff and the stuff that the writers who work with me write at lastwordonsports.com. We are, still a sort of a growing site, but I think that we do some really good work. And we're just starting to recruit new writers for team beats. We're just starting up, setting up beats for each team in Major League Baseball. So we're really looking for writers who are passionate about their team, who want to come work for us to cover that for their team. So you want to do that, just go to lastwordonsports.com/write for us, and we'll consider your application. But we're really trying to grow in for each team.
All right. Awesome. Well, Josh, I really appreciate you coming on. I'll have to have you on again soon to talk some more baseball. And then on that note, we'll be right back here with Corbin Reef from Rolling Stone Magazine. Talk some about his new upcoming book and the death of Prince here on Bob Sullivan Show here on LateNightSportsRadio.com.
Second to keep breathing in the moment before it's gone. You never know when love is lost until you find just what it costs to be wrong. I wonder if you think of me passing by, you think you see me coming. I wonder if you pull me in, kiss me just one time again. Coming and the nights will keep on going till they're tired, falling fast asleep and as they dream of ghosts of beats filled with desire. The chance of life is all around, a chance to take is always found. Writing on the lullabies, I'm alone and live your life. Do you remember? Lost or found, love lying by your side. In the final hours of night, do you remember? and I didn't remember. Lost or found love lying by your side.
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Welcome back to the Bob Sullivan Show here on latenightsportsradio.com. I'd like to thank Josh Greenberg for coming on, talk baseball. Here in part 2 of hour number 1, I got Corbin Reef, writer of the upcoming book Lighters in the Sky, and from Rolling Stone magazine. Corbin, how you doing tonight?
Fantastic, Bob. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem, and I'm sorry about that just disgraceful introduction for you. That was
You covered the basic ground. It's all good.
yeah, it was a slow production, but I got it done in the end.
There you go. That's all that counts.
Well, Corbin, this week we lost another legend. 2016 has been, I mean, we should have seen at some point these greats from the 70s, 80s, 90s were going to eventually start to fall. But it's been a hard 2016. The addition of Prince to the heaven of great performers to go down this year was added. What was your take on what happened there?
I mean, shock. I mean, right off the bat, I mean, he wasn't exactly an old guy, 57 years old. He was still pretty vibrant. He was in the middle of a tour, the piano microphone tour, going out different hit and run stops along the way across the country. And it's, there was that incident with he supposedly had the flu, but kind of got over that, and then just all of a sudden, one day he's just gone, and it's just, these 60s and 70s artists like Glenn Frey, your David Bowie, even your Merle Haggard recently, those aren't as shocking. I mean, they're a little older, baby boomer generation, and Prince is more Gen X. So, I mean, it wasn't the level of, say, Michael Jackson, but it was definitely a tremendous blow.
Did you, I didn't tweet anything about it, I didn't Facebook anything about it, because the one thing with this is he was just hospitalized the 15th. And it was an hour away from where he was going to land. And, I didn't say anything, but at the time when it happened, it was just like, that's kind of weird. And when it was announced he died, I was just like, I can't really say I'm surprised. Like, did anybody else not hear this news that just happened like 5 days ago? Like, he just had, a rush landing an hour away from his, from where he was going, and they had to down a plane. They had to go to the hospital, and it was, the flu and everything. What were you all that shocked, or especially with the news from 5 days earlier, basically?
I still was pretty shocked myself, only because I'd been following that piece of news, and I was aware that he had hosted a party at Paisley Park a couple days beforehand to kind of get his face out there. I'm assuming to get a bunch of people. I think it was a kind of a show. At least in my mind, it was comforting. Like, okay, we still got Prince. He's fine. It really might have been just the flu. We still don't know what happened. We still don't know the extent of the rumors that are going on about substance abuse or pill addiction, or those are at this point unfounded. So we really don't know what happened. But I was at a bookstore when I got the news, and I dropped the book I was holding. It actually really took me by surprise.
Had you heard about in the days since, have you heard about the rumor of AIDS?
I have not heard that one, no. Prince was a very private individual. I'm not going to speculate on what really had caused his death at this time, but you never really know with Prince what was going on behind the scenes, because he really didn't let many people in. I mean, he wasn't the recluse that people made him out to be, but at the same time, he had much a very close knit inner circle, and beyond that, it was really all just rumor and speculation. I mean, throughout his entire life.
With him and Michael Jackson, there's a lot of comparisons there. I think they're more like just ignorant comparisons when you kind of look down when you break it down. But with those two, Michael Jackson was very. I think he tried to be private, but everything just got out there. All the weirdness, all the strange things that happened with him got out there. I think there's a lot more strangeness to Prince than we ever knew, but it never got out there. He was able to keep himself closed off and I guess just the spectacle around their music is really my only comparison. But do you feel like there's any comparison, or do you think it's pretty, a pretty ignorant job by the outsiders if they're like, oh, Prince is kind of like Michael Jackson? Do you think that's kind of a ignorant comparison?
I don't know that it's ignorant. When you look at the eras they were both in, I mean, they were really the only two black men on MTV in regular circulation making real waves. So I think that on that aspect, people were really quick to make that comparison early on, as unfounded as it is, because they were pop stars, but they were very diametrically opposed pop stars. You had Michael Jackson, who was all about the show, the dance, the pop hits. He had collaborators, Quincy Jones, who took control a lot of the music. He was more of an Elvis figure almost, whereas Prince was more very much involved in the musicality. I mean, you look at his album For You, I think the first album he ever did, I think he has like every single instrument he played on it. There was just a different vibe from both of them. But early on, I mean, there's a book coming out by the former writer of Grantland, Stephen Hyden, and he goes into the entire Prince versus Michael Jackson rivalry in one of his chapters, which I'd recommend people check out. He's a fantastic writer. But the comparisons, I mean, they were fueled by the media, which then fueled them amongst each other. But really, when you come down to it, they weren't really into the same thing.
Yeah. Well, who would you compare Prince to as far as, as far as like a rock, he's not really a rock star, he's not really a pop star, he's kind of a crossbreed. But who would you compare him most to, like, I guess of people that are alive right now? Like, who in the rock and roll industry would you compare him to? Like, I've heard comparisons to, like, Springsteen, where it's just like he just has all this unfound catalog that he hasn't released, that he could play, he could play 95 different shows and none of them would be the same because of how many different songs he could play. Would you compare him to Springsteen, or is there somebody else you would compare him to?
I think Springsteen is an apt comparison. I think that if you really to look at someone who I think fits the bill even better, is Jimi Hendrix. Both were really big studio hounds. I mean, there's a reason we still get posthumous releases from Jimi Hendrix, is because the guy never left the studio. Same with Prince. He lived basically in his own recording studio. That's where his house was, Paisley Park. But then when you get in front of a crowd, I mean, there was almost no comparison at the time between what those two men put on, the kind of show they put on, the spectacle, the energy, the guitar work. They just had a different way of looking at music too. They both looked at music through a kaleidoscope of color, purple. I mean, it's easy to kind of make that kind of translation. But I think that they both had a love of music, but also this inner charisma and talent that just couldn't be denied.
I was not the biggest fan of Prince. I liked pretty much the mainstream stuff, Little Red Corvette, and 1999, and I mean that, I mean that's pretty much it. But I'm not like when Michael Jackson died. This is horrible to say, but like I was sad when Prince died, and I didn't want him to die or anything. But when Michael Jackson died, I was like, damn, that's like, and that was like one of the first big, huge music icons. I'm 26. That was one of the few huge icons that died in my lifetime. I mean, that was like our Elvis. Like, Elvis didn't die in your lifetime like that. In our lifetime, that was our kind of Elvis, and he was ready to go back on tour, kind of a farewell tour.
Right.
And, we were ready to hear, that was a guy that I listened to on the way to school, whether it be Man in the Mirror, Jackson 5, Bad, Beat It, all these songs that I listened to on the way to school. I listened to Springsteen on the way to school too, but that was the first huge person that died for me in my lifetime. So that hit me hard. Clarence from E Street Band dying, that hit me hard. Glenn Frey, I used to listen to the Eagles all the time. That hurt. This one, it was like, I don't know if I'm not in touch enough with listening to Prince that it should have hit me harder than it did, but it wasn't like my world is collapsing when he died, like music, right. Like I was not as into his music as I was those other three. Where do am I wrong on not embracing his music as much as I should have with those other three?
No, absolutely not. I mean, music is a relative art. It impacts you differently. You find it at different ages, and your formative years, those 14 to 22, are those years where it's obviously going to make the biggest impact, and those are the years that's going to stick with your, throughout the rest of your life. So I mean, you don't want you ever feel bad if everyone else is mourning this tragic loss and you don't feel it as deeply. I think that Michael Jackson's a hard one to compare anybody to because, like you said, he was prepping to go on tour again. He was rehearsing. Everyone knew that. There's another writer, Wesley Morris, who said that when Michael Jackson died, it was like the world stopped. And Prince didn't feel like the world stopped. It felt like there was a sadness that hung in the air, but people kept going. And there was also that element, too, where Prince's material is a lot harder to find than Michael's. You couldn't just dial it up. He's not just laying around. There's not on streaming services unless you have Tidal. So it wasn't in the air as much. You're not going to the grocery store and you're not hearing, Red Corvette or Cream or Controversy, Let's Go Crazy. Like maybe like you should, but that's just the reality. The guy was very protective of his own music. So I don't think you need to feel bad about it. I mean, I personally, I took it pretty harder than I expected to, just because, he was there for some, impactful moments of my life, his music was at least. And I always really wanted to see him live because I knew, just based on reputation, that there was almost nobody better. And it was just a shame that I never got to.
Yeah, it's it's just a kind of a funny, like Michael Jackson's. I remember where I was making sandwiches on an assembly line. When I heard that Michael Jackson had died, I was just like, "Oh, you're kidding," because it was just some goofy person that would always say, just be like, "Yeah, I got to get home. I got to watch Michael Jackson." He died, and I was like, "Okay, good one." And with Michael Jackson, it was just everything was public. He had that interview a couple, 5 or 6 years earlier. With that British guy from BBC on Nightline about, his spending habits and holding his child over the balcony. Like, he never had anything like, does Prince have kids? Has Prince ever done anything wacky like that? We have no idea. Prince hasn't been charged with anything as far as, the stuff that Michael Jackson was charged with.
He did change his name to a symbol, though. That's pretty out there.
That's true. Yeah. And, I mean, like changing his name, and this stuff with like Prince is like, changing his name. He was pretty quiet. Like he wasn't on Larry King Live. He was on Larry King Live like a couple times I remember, but not all the time or anything like that. He wasn't just he was weird because he was quiet and private. He wasn't weird because he was out there and everybody knew he was weird. It was a different kind of weird with him.
That's an interesting point, actually, because if you look at the parallel between Michael Jackson and Prince from that perspective, in the early '80s, Prince was the weirdo. Prince was the sex fiend, the bikini wearer, the incomprehensible dude in Purple Rain. Parents didn't understand him. He was one of the filthy 15 that made the parental advisory sticker of Tipper Gore's big issue. And Michael Jackson was the relatively he was Michael Jackson 5. Parents could accept him. Everyone owned a copy of Thriller. And as the years wore on, Prince seemed to get more normal, and Michael seemed to get more crazy with the monkey and all the allegations and everything like that. And they just kind of bisected at a certain point. And it's just the way it works. Perception is reality.
What would your number one Prince song be? And what's your number one See, this is the thing that, it's like, I don't think that they should be, they're comparable, but I think it's not an ignorant comparison, but it's a lazy comparison. But I'm going to make you make a comparison, okay? So what's your top Prince song, and what's your top Michael song? And who would you say has the better song of their number one overall song, according to Corbin Reeve?
Oh, boy. Wow, you just put me on the spot tonight. Okay. I think, there's a difference between, favorite and best. And my favorite Prince song is The Ballad of Dorothy Parker, off Sign of the Times. But I think the best Prince song, it's got to be either Purple Rain or Let's Go Crazy. One of the two. I mean, then you have Doves Cry. Those three songs. I'll put those three songs up there. Actually, if you want to get really down to it, you want to stack Purple Rain against Thriller. That's what you want to do. I mean, both those.
I like that. Now you've turned the question back around. Yeah, you've. All right. So what do you got?
I think that it's really interesting when you have Thriller. That obviously surpasses Purple Rain. It was the best-selling album. It came out in 1982. It was the best-selling album of 1983 and 1984, the same year that Purple Rain came out. But Purple Rain obviously had also a tremendous impact. It spent 26 continuous weeks at number one, 24 continuous weeks at number one. It spawned two number one hits, but there's no comparison really to Thriller. So I do have to give it to Thriller. Billie Jean's one of the greatest songs of all time.
Yeah, I also feel like with Michael Jackson, you gave three examples for Prince. Prince is kind of like, again, it's like Springsteen, where it's like you could ask, okay, who, I'm not a huge fan, but you could ask them, okay, what's your favorite Prince song? And they can't be wrong. And like with Springsteen, it's kind of the same way, where it's like, what's your favorite Springsteen song? You could be like, oh, Born in the USA, Born to Run, Thunder Road.
Down Train.
you can't be wrong. Out on the Streets. I mean, you can't be wrong with what, I mean, if you're in the room with a bunch of Springsteen fans, you can't be wrong. If you're in the room with a bunch of Prince fans, you can't be wrong. Right. Michael Jackson, I feel like it's a little more limited than Prince as far as, and I don't know if that's because, like, there's a lot of good Michael Jackson songs, but I think it's more of really good songs than anything. Billie Jean and Thriller are great, but I feel like Prince, I think he has more depth to his work.
That's very possible. I mean, when you look at Michael Jackson, there's Thriller, and not to disparage his catalog, but there's Thriller and there's everything else. Mm-hmm. But then you come to Prince, and there's people who are like, obviously Purple Rain's the greatest album in Prince's discography, and then you have those people who are like, well, what about Sign of the Times? And then you have those people who are like, what about Parade or 1999 or the self-titled album 1979? I mean, they all are defensible positions to some extent. It's a little bit ludicrous, but there's an argument that can be made.
A couple more questions before I let you go.
Okay.
All right. Lighters in the Sky, your upcoming book about the best concerts of all time.
Indeed.
First question. How is that coming?
It's coming along. I've been listening to a lot of bootlegs. I'm currently writing it. Listening to a lot of bootlegs. I've got all the shows picked out. It goes back to 1960, and basically the premise is if you could go to only one concert a year every year from 1960 to the present day, what concert would it be? And then I basically make the case for that particular show that I picked out, and each year is a different chapter. So I got them all lined up. I've got about, a third of it done or so, slogging through, listening to bootlegs, doing interviews, just hacking away at it.
Is I've heard from people that have written. I had an author that wrote a biography of Michael Jordan, and he said the toughest part was, kind of digging into the mindset of Jordan or, guys that coached him throughout his career, like kind of like digging into, what they were thinking this many years later on a game, that was in the 90s or even in the 80s. What's the toughest part about digging into a concert that may have happened in the 60s or in the 70s?
The hardest part for me in writing about those shows is trying to get into the mind of someone who would want to go. What else was going on that year that might be better? What else was going on that year that might preclude them? What was going on that year, that artist, that would make you want to see them? Were they at the pinnacle of the powers? Were they on the rise? Was it the last show? There's all these different factors that you have to take into account that make a show a special show, a show that people want to go to and then talk about for the rest of their lives, basically. So it's all about finding the right context. That's the difficult part, figuring out what's going on, trying to get in the mindset of baby boomers and Gen Xers and millennials and all these different people throughout the years and all these different genres, because, I have blues artists, rockabilly artists, rock artists, pop artists, rap artists. There's so many different flavors that are in the book. So I would say that's probably the hardest part.
Is with what's the most recent concert and what was the closest you had to come to renaming the book Cell Phone Lights in the Sky?
Well, the most recent concert so far, I would like, if something happened in 2016, I would definitely like to include it. But the most recent one so far that I've got is Drake's OVO Fest in 2015 last year. The whole Meek Mill thing, the lineup was crazy. Drake was there, Future was there, Pharrell Williams was there, Kanye West was there. They tore it down, basically. And it was just an unbelievable 4 hours of music that people were privy to. And then it goes all the way back to 1960, which I actually picked Muddy Waters at Newport, Newport Jazz Festival. There was a giant riot that involved Ray Charles. They almost had to shut it down, but then the National Historic Society stepped in to prevent the town from shutting it down so they could let Muddy Waters go on stage because they were filming it for posterity. So there's a whole big mania about it. So it goes from basically Muddy Waters to Drake and everything in between.
Who's your favorite band in this? Of all the bands that are in these, that are going to be in this book and all their concerts, who is your favorite band that you have researched so far? I'm Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin and Earl's Court in 1975. If I could have gone to any show in any time in history, it'd be Led Zeppelin at Earl's Court. May 25th, 1975. They played for almost 4 hours. They played acoustic set and electric set. They busted out 2 different encores. To me, that's the pinnacle. I think that's what I would go with. Is there anybody, like I always have with, whether it be with sports where, I'll see like a 30 for 30 where I'll be like, I don't know why, I wish I would have liked that Pistons team, or I wish I would have grasped onto this Magic team. And you start to fall in love more with a team after the fact. Is there a band that you have fallen in love with that you've researched more so and started listening more to their stuff in the aftermath of researching these concerts?
That's a good question. That's tough. I would say the Clash are one that I've really gotten into a lot more. They played a 17-date residency at this place called Bond's Casino in the middle of Times Square. It's just unprecedented. And I've always loved the Clash. London Calling's a great album. Their first Self-Titled that debut is a great album. Sandinistas is a great album. But this is a live music entity. I never really got into them before. So just to get into those bootlegs and listen to the show, listen to the intensity is just breathtaking. Another one that I wish I could have included was the Grateful Dead. I don't like the Grateful Dead. I'm not a Deadhead at all. I respect their reputation. But really, just their prime years were superseded by so many other people. And the one real mention of them that I have, which is 1969 Woodstock, you have to include Woodstock. It's kind of like a rock and roll law. They had a terrible set. It was raining. They had a prime time slot, but they tripped out on acid. There was electrical problems. So the only real mention I have of the Grateful Dead is negative. And I apologize in advance to any Deadheads out there that I might offend.
I am not a deadhead, but I'm not going to be offended by that comment. Last question before I let you go. Do you
Sure.
Have you found yourself with any of these bands where you're just like, I can't, you've gotten sick of their sound, and you've gotten sick of their sound listening to them in concert, or you've thought less of them because of what you've heard? Okay, so these bands would not make it into your book because they would not be the greatest concerts of all time. But bands that you think they're not as good because they don't sound good in concert. Is there any band like that you've come across because they're a studio band?
Yeah, totally.
Play?
I think that a great example is the Cars. I like the Cars. Moving in Stereo is great. Fast Times at Ridgemont High comes to mind when I listen to that song. But they have no charisma whatsoever live. I think Steely Dan is another example of a band that's great in the studio. Age is a great album, but it just doesn't translate in the same way live, even though I'm probably going to get skewered for that. Also, I'd say the Bee Gees obviously had a monstrous impact in the late 70s, but their concerts were pretty lighthearted affairs. And really, half of a show is the audience. Is the audience engaged? Is the audience going along with it? And you have to have a kind of performer and performance who can elicit that from the audience. James Brown was able to take any audience anywhere, anytime in the world, and take him with him, even if he didn't, they weren't fans of his music. They get carried away by his charisma, his moves on the stage, his voice, his presence. And Rick Ocasek, for as great as he is as a producer and a guitarist, just didn't have that.
What is a concert that you're most likely to go to this summer? Are you going to go see Guns N' Roses, or are you going to go see the reuniting of Sugar Ray, Lit, Sponge, and Everclear in Peoria, Illinois?
Well, I am going to have to miss that one. I will be.
That's a great show. Everclear. That's a guaranteed good 8 songs between 4 bands.
You said that, I didn't, but I'll be there for Guns N' Roses. The one I'm really excited about that I hope goes through, that I want to get a ticket to, is the Mega Fest that the Coachella organizers are putting on. Where they're hoping to get Bob Dylan, Rolling Stones, The Who, Paul McCartney, Neil Young, and Roger Waters, all for one festival at the Coachella grounds in October. So if that happens, if that goes down, I will definitely be there for that. I'll buy a ticket. I'll buy a plane ticket. I'll buy a hotel. I'll be there.
Well, and I hate to rob you of your time, but one last thing. Okay, I need to settle a debate. Does Jeff Lynne belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I think that Electric Light Orchestra belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know about Jeff Lynne specifically, but sure, why not? I think that Jeff Lynne's a great guy. He's got a great ear for music. He's got a great ear for great sound. I love that song, Telephone Line. I love that song. Showdown's another great song. I mean, I think he'll get in at some point. I mean, I think that ELO will get in at some point. They're big in their impact.
I was laughed at tonight when I suggested that he should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and so that's where I'm at in my life. But Corbin, I let you go. Do you want to tell everybody where we can find you on Twitter, the internets, all that good stuff?
Sure. At Corbin Reef, if you want more information about my book. At Lighter in Sky. I think Lighter in Sky. Look it up. Look at me at Corbin Reef. There'll be a little link to it. You can click that link and follow that as well.
All righty, awesome, Corbin. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Always a good time when we get together, and we'll have to have you on again soon when there's, possibly another controversy in the music world, and when we get closer to your book release.
I look forward to it.
So, all right. Well, when we come back, we'll be back with Kenneth Teep of I don't know what website he's with, but I'm going to screw that up. Here on Bob Sullivan Show, here on LateNightSportsRadio.com.
it, but I can't seem to figure it through. I wanna make it better, but now I'm scared of looking a fool. Oh, baby, no, I've never been very good at playing it cool. Just when I think I understand it all, I find I know nothing at all. I never know nobody like you. Now I know I'm an enigma. Yeah, you keep me guessing, I'm confessing now, baby, it's true. I never know nobody like you. Baby, you're an enigma. Baby, you're an enigma.
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Thomas said, stay home, get away from me. Saying I was bad for you, he got his way. I'm gone for good.
Welcome back to the Bob Sullivan Show here on latenightsportsradio.com. I am joined here in hour number 2. I don't know if it's going to last an hour, but we're going to talk as long as we possibly can. Because I'm joined by Kenneth Teep of the EmpireWritesBack.com. Kenny, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Bob. Thanks for having me on again.
No problem. The most important question that I'm going to have to ask you before we get started here is, are you excited about the concert that's coming out between Sugar Ray, Everclear, Lit, and Sponge?
I'm not even sure what that means, to be completely honest with you.
You're not into any of those bands. Yeah, you're younger than me, so you're not into any of those bands.
I can honestly say I've never heard of any of the bands you just named.
That's a shame. You're way too millennial for my liking, Ken. We're going to have to end this conversation right now. But
that was fun while it lasted.
Yeah. Well, going here into the playoffs. Well, we're not really going into them, but do you think David Stern needs to step in here and start rigging some of these series for Adam Silver?
Rigging or making them shorter. I'm not really sure why they
Shorter?
I mean, you know why they made them longer. I don't like watching these blowouts. These are like a waste of my time sometimes. I mean, how many good teams have we seen? Maybe you could probably count them on one hand.
Okay. Shorter, I agree. I want a 5-game series are probably the way to go. But I would say,
at least for the first round, yeah. At least for the first round only.
Yeah, for the first round, definitely. But I would say this. All these people saying, oh, we need to cut down on number of teams that make the playoffs. No. We need to cut down to a 5-game series so that game, if a team, the lower seeded team splits it on the road, that games 3 and 4 means something in the first round at least. And it makes things a little bit more interesting. I mean, as Bill Simmons was saying, there's no pressure on the Thunder to do anything other than split on the road against the Mavericks. I mean, there's no pressure on them whatsoever. And then the Warriors, all they have to do, obviously they took care of business, but it would have been series over now. They get a week to rest. But where do you stand on, what we've seen so far in the playoffs?
There's been a couple of good games. I know the Celtics won and the Hawks this afternoon or early evening, depending on where you are. That was a good game to watch, but there's just been so many blowouts. I know, like, a lot of teams are injured. Like Memphis, they try hard, but they have no business being in a series against the Spurs. So it's a lot of games like that. But usually it'll hopefully pick up probably within, like, next week once these first round series are over. Like, if you could stomach these, then you'll get good basketball after that.
Looking at the Warriors, one, do you think they were not selling how severe the ankle injury was for Curry initially? The number two is knee injury now. Do you think that, these kind of, it's 2 injuries in 4 games? I know that's a way more, that's a higher quantity than you want, of a greater ratio than you want. Do you see this derailing their chances? Do you see them getting out against the Clippers with a 75% Curry?
I guess it really just truly depends on how much rest they get. Like, if the Blazers win another game and they extend the series against the Clippers and it lets the Warriors rest longer, they'll definitely help Curry, because as we saw today, they don't really need him to beat the Rockets. But once you continue moving on in the playoffs, I think they would definitely need him. So I think against the Clippers, Curry under 100% they could probably handle, because the Clippers, they usually hurt themselves more than the other team hurts them. But if they played against the Spurs without a healthy Curry, I think it would be a struggle for the Warriors.
Do you think, with the way the Thunder are playing right now, scratch out Game 2, because that was just a fluke of how bad Kevin Durant was. If Durant plays half as well as half better than how bad he was, if that makes sense, they blow him out in Game 2 as well. So, do you think the Thunder have a shot against the Spurs? Because the last person I talked to on the Johnny Bobo show, we were talking, and he thinks the Thunder can win the West. Do you think that's possible now? Do you think this opens up the Thunder's eyes? Oh, hey, Curry is a little banged up. We can make a run now. We know we can beat the Spurs. And the Warriors, they had their shots in the regular season. They could beat them too with a 75% Curry.
I know, obviously, Westbrook and Durant are 2 outstanding players, but it seems like they still struggle doing the same thing when they had Scott Brooks there. They don't really have much of a half-court offense at times, it seems. So, I mean, against a team that plays defense as well as the Spurs do, I think they would still struggle a little bit. They're probably getting confidence, but I don't know how much confidence you get from being a Mavericks team that's as injured as they are. But if they're going to build confidence off it, it'll probably make for a better series. I just don't see how they could beat the Spurs if the Spurs are healthy and playing like they are.
Right now, with the Clippers, what do you think without a fully healthy Curry, say Curry sits out the first 2 games, what do you think the most important thing is for the Clippers? I mean, obviously, it would, ideally it would be getting games, getting at least a split.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming Curry's going to be out for at least 1 or 2 games at the most in this series. With the sprained MCL, that's not conducive for playing multiple games in the next in the next week or so. Do you see the Clippers being able to? And I know I'm sawing the Blazers off. I don't see them winning this series. Do you think the Clippers can get enough of a commanding lead that if Curry comes back and is healthy enough that they can still win the series?
I think the key for the Clippers is that they have to get Blake Griffin going. He hasn't been playing too well so far in the playoffs, and the Blazers don't really have a power forward, so it's kind of shocking. But they have to get some production from someone outside of Chris Paul. He seems to be the only one consistently stepping up right now. But he would also be the one probably who benefits the most if Curry sits out, because he won't have to chase him around. So if they did somehow manage to win both games, in Golden State, then they would have an outstanding shot of advancing, since they would only have to win 2 of their 3 home games the rest of the series.
Was there enough of a reaction to the bench for the Rockets when they beat the Warriors with the Harden shot? Was there enough of a reaction, or do you give a crap about what happened there? Should we give a crap about how disinterested they looked when Harden made that shot to get the series to 2-1?
I would like to see the benches get a little more excited. We've seen it, like in college and stuff. We see the other NBA benches, but I think there was still time left in the game, so you don't want to get overly excited since the game wasn't over yet. But it definitely seems to show a little disconnection between the players on the team, that they don't show a little more emotion, especially with something like as big as that, like Game 3 on your home court. You would like to see the players react a little more positively, but they probably know as well as anybody else that they're not going anywhere against the Warriors.
The thing that pissed me off the most was how not upset they were that they weren't going to overtime to save me the $20 I bet that game was going to go into the over on 203 points. And they were just like, well, we're not going to over. I guess actually I was more impressed that they were disappointed that it wasn't going to go to the over. So I am glad by Dwight Howard and Corey Brewer that they had that reaction. But that cost me some money, and then it also cost me and my roommate some money that when we bet that the Warriors were going to win money line. We bet the money line on the Warriors when they were down by 18, and that almost happened too. So that was just a colossal cluster F, so to speak.
Maybe Dwight Howard and Corey Brewer had the same bets as you. That's why they reacted like that on the bench.
That is possible. Looking at, are we not as thankful for David Stern as we should be? With all these, I feel like if David Stern was still commissioner, I like Silver. He takes a hard line stance on a lot of things, but maybe he takes too hard of a line on stance on some things. That causes these series to not be that interesting. Like, okay, Miami and Charlotte, it's 2-1 right now, but none of those games have been closed. Atlanta, Boston, it's 2-2 now. I mean, we might only get like 2 game 6s out of this first round. That's terrible.
Yeah, that's not good.
We need, multiple game 7s. Like, what was it, 2 years ago? I know it's a luck of the draw, but a couple of years ago we had like 5 game 7s in the first round, and we're not getting that any. I know it's 1 year, and it stirs up a lot of complaints, but Stern was very good at getting those game 7s, whether it was legal or not, speculation or not. But during the Stern era, when we needed a game 7, we got a game 7. Whether it was a good game or not, doesn't matter. We got it. Do you think that Stern needs to step in here and advise Silver to make some suggestions to these referees to get some game 7s here?
Because it does look weird, because it seems like the way that they market some of these playoff series is that they forget that there are some teams playing. And then some of the scheduling is just poor, like on the TV. Like last Sunday, I think it was, in their primetime game, they had the Spurs and the Memphis Grizzlies. So, I mean, no one wants to watch that at 8:30 on a Sunday. So I think the scheduling and stuff like that could also play a part into the disinterest and everything. But I don't think there's too many teams in the playoffs. I just think that the series is a little too long. Because these, like you said, there's too many blowouts, and there's just not as many good teams to compensate as there have been in the past.
Looking into the East right now, Cavs, they're moving on. You look at the Raptors-Pacers series, it's 2-2, but it hasn't been all that interesting. Miami, I feel like that's a team that they do everything. When they look good, it makes you want to completely buy into them. But when they're playing against, then they have a game against the Hornets the other night where they kind of crumble, and you can see some chinks in the armor. You can see some crumbles in the foundation. Is there a team in the East that can beat the Cavs? I think it's. I feel like the Raptors, they don't have enough, firepower. They don't have enough 3-point threats. I feel like the Heat, although they don't have a lot of 3-point threats, I feel like they're able to morph their game to best suit them against against the Cavs or against the Raptors. They're the best team that can adjust on the fly. And I feel like they're the only team in the East that can beat the Cavs. Do you agree with that? And do you think that they can actually beat the Cavs in the series?
Yeah, Miami would be the team I would pick also if anyone was going to knock off the Cavs. I think they kind of have that, they've been there before. They know how to do it. And LeBron James going up against him, I think would motivate them a little more. And he seems to, not that he plays worse, just that it's kind of like a big brother, little brother mentality sort of thing, I think, that they have over him when he plays against them. But I like you said, they have a really good coach in Eric Spoelstra. They know what they're doing. They've been there before. And they probably have arguably the best starting five, at least in the Eastern Conference, after getting like Joe Johnson there, with how well Luol Deng played at power forward. But I think the biggest advantage that they have over the Cavaliers would probably be Hassan Whiteside, because the Cavaliers don't like to play a real center most times. It seems like Tristan Thompson plays a lot more. I don't see him slowing down Hassan Whiteside in the paint at all.
Is LeBron, the way he... Do you see do you see say they lose to the Heat? Do you see a similar walk off the court, take off your jersey, throw it somewhere, like he did against the Celtics when he wound up going to the Heat in the offseason? Do you see a similar fashion of him walking off the court, an overly dramatic scene, if they lose to the Heat?
I would think so. He seems passionate about winning. Obviously, he cares about winning, and if he would lose to a team like the Heat, obviously, I think it would disappoint him highly. But I don't know if it would have the same impact as that last time, since he signed somewhere else afterwards. I don't know. I really can't see him leaving the Cavaliers, since he's basically handpicking the coaching staff, the players, and everything. So for him to leave with all that power would be surprising. But there would be some sort of memorable exit if the Heat did knock him off in the playoffs.
With a healthy Kyrie, a healthy Kevin Love, a healthy LeBron going into the finals, what teams do you think it's just the Spurs and the Warriors that can beat them, or do you think the Thunder could take them down to the finals?
I would probably put the Cavaliers. I would agree, definitely behind the Spurs and the Warriors. But I would think the Thunder would give them a good run for their money, because they don't have anyone to slow down Westbrook. Because they don't have the same team defense as like the Spurs and the Warriors do. And obviously Kevin Durant's a matchup nightmare, no matter who's guarding him. But I think they could definitely give the Cavaliers some problems if that happened to be the NBA Finals matchup this year.
With the Thunder, Durant, does he re-sign in the offseason for a one-year deal with the Thunder, or does he go to some garbage heap like the Lakers or Knicks?
I personally, I can't see him leaving the Thunder if it's not to go to a better situation. I'm not sure what team would give him that. I mean, a lot of people would say like the Wizards would go after him, but is that really improving him, like his chance of winning anymore? I know he'd be leaving the Western Conference, and they'd be pretty strong with him, John Wall and Beal. But I'm not sure. I can't really see him leaving, because the Thunder could give him the most money, and as the current landscape is, they probably give him the best chance to win as well.
All right, let's say you're 6'9", have one of the greatest shooting strokes in the NBA, and might be a top 5 player. And you're from Washington, D.C. Where do you sign do you sign a 1-year to see what your friend Russell does? Or do you go home? Or do you go to a Rockets situation where you get to go play with James Harden? And I also think there's a third possibility where he re-signs with OKC, and then him and Russell decide to sign with Houston to play with James Harden. What do you think the odds are of that, and what would you do if you're in his situation?
I personally would go back home. I think that'd be a lot of fun to play in front of like your home fans, in front of your family and friends 41 times a year, and 9 clean play, and then even more once the playoffs start. But I don't really. He probably would like to see what him and Westbrook would do, but I also have a feeling. But it just seems to be sometimes where they each want to play without the other one, just to prove that they can do it, which probably isn't the best way to go about if they want to win. But I've always said that if Durant or Westbrook was going to win, they'd probably have to split. So if he's going to do it, this is the best time to do it. He's not really going to maximize his earnings or be able to pick a team like he can now as an unrestricted free agent.
All right, quick question before we get into your kind of finals picks from what you've seen so far in the first round. What do you think of the NBA wanting to put ads on jerseys?
I don't understand why they want to put ads on jerseys. There's ads all over the court. They're on the things where you check in. I don't really know what a little. I think they say it's a 2x4 patch. I think they're putting on there. I'm not really sure what it's going to change. I mean, they'll probably make a lot of money on it, but I just don't see the point of doing it.
I don't have a. As long as I mean, technically we've been having ads on jerseys, whether it be, a Nike or an Adidas logo in the corner, whatever it may be. We've technically had that.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't want to mess, I don't want it to become the WNBA where there's, it just looks like a NASCAR car. Just some NBA, Kevin Durant's running down the court in Home Depot with 40 different logos with the 35 in the middle. I don't want to see that. But if it's in addition to, an Adidas logo and then a Sonic logo, I don't have a huge issue with that. As long, I don't think that, everybody's so caught up in this, the sanctity of the jerseys. Well, to pay the, this is the path we've walked down as sports fans with what, these owners are paying these players. This is the path we've walked down. This is what we've gotten to with paying players $30 million a year or $20 million a year. This is why these logos are, and if the players want to complain about it, then take a lesser salary. Otherwise, I don't have a problem with it. If there's a little Sonic logo, on the left shoulder or a, Dunkin' Donuts logo on the back, I don't care about that. As long as you still see Thunder across the front or Knicks across the front or New York, whatever it may be, I don't have a problem with that.
It sounds like it's going to be small enough where it doesn't take away from, the team name on the jersey, which I guess that's a true point because I know you said like the safety of the jersey. Like I think it's going to be a little weird to see like a logo plastered on like a Boston Celtics jersey or like you said a Knicks jersey. Like those are iconic jerseys, so I think it'll be a little weird at first. But you'll get used to it, just like when they started putting names and numbers on the backs of them too.
The question is, would it have that stupid logo if we bought, say, me and you go in, Madison Square to go buy a Sasha Vujacic jersey? Are we going to have a Subway logo with Jared Fogle on the logo? Are we going to see that on the jersey? I mean, that I would kind of have a problem with that if we're buying a team jersey and it has, well, definitely if it had Jared Fogle on it. But if it had like a Subway logo on it, I would kind of have a problem with that. Could we still get at least the jersey, the replica, without the Subway endorsement or Sonic endorsement on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy a jersey if it had the logos and endorsements on it. That seems a little weird to me. And then they're probably going to raise the prices if they have it on there too, because whoever's logo it is like, oh, I want a cut of the money also. So I can't see myself buying one if there's like a Subway or any logo just plastered on the corner of a Knicks jersey.
Last couple questions before I let you go. Right now, halfway through the first round and partially complete of some of the first round, who do you have going to the finals right now?
Right now, currently, given the situation that no one's really sure of the health of Stephen Curry, I'd say the Spurs are going to come out of the Western Conference, and then I don't want to pick the Cavaliers, but after what the Heat did in Game 3 with Nicholas Batum out, I can't confidently pick them, so I'd probably say the Spurs and the Cavaliers right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to see the Spurs make the finals, but it just doesn't. If we don't get a healthy, 100% healthy Warriors versus 100% healthy Spurs in the Western Conference Finals, with how shitty this entire NBA season has been, as far as everybody except for the top three teams has been pretty unpleasant to watch. Like I like the Raptors, but they're not all that fun to watch. I like the Thunder, but Billy Donovan F's stuff up from time to time as far as rotation goes. Really the same situations they've gotten into when it's Scott Brooks. And then the Clippers are a dumpster fire from time to time with everybody thinking Doc Rivers is the savior. Other than the top three teams, this is the first time in like 5 years where you're like, man, I really don't want to watch the Western Conference, or I really don't want to watch any of the first round in the NBA playoffs. This is the first time that's happened. I just want to get to, if we don't get at least Warriors, Spurs, and then, Cavs versus Warriors or whoever in the finals, I feel like this has been a completely wasted NBA season. And
I would agree with you. Yeah,
I wasted a bunch on League Pass, watching League Pass for free all this year because of it. I mean, there's not like watching like the Bucks on League Pass. That's fine when at least you get a good NBA playoffs. But when you're wasting time watching the Bucks and the Magic and the Kings on League Pass, and then you get a crappy NBA playoffs, it is totally not worth it.
Mm-hmm. I can understand that. I mean, sometimes, there are other teams that didn't make the playoffs. They're entertaining. Like the Minnesota Timberwolves are fun to watch. I personally enjoy watching the Kings, but I would agree if the Spurs and Warriors don't face in the playoffs at 100%, it is a colossal waste of time. It's just not. That's what they've been leading up to all season, was that those two would face off in the playoffs, and if we don't get it, it's just a huge disappointment.
Well, final thing before I let you go. You want to tell everybody where we can find you on Twitter, the internets, all that good stuff?
Mm-hmm. You can find my personal Twitter account. It's Teepster725, Teapester 725. And then you can find our website, Twitter account, Empire Writes Back. There's a Facebook page. You can find all our work there. Me and Nick have been working there for a while now, so we're trying to get everything back in order. It's been going well recently. We had our best month, actually, and our best week this past week. We had over 100,000 views for the first time in a week, so it's pretty exciting.
Well, Kenny, I appreciate you coming on. Check out his work. Always great at EmpireWritesBack.com. And always a very loyal guest of the show here on the Bob Sullivan Show. So check out his work. And next week we'll be back with God knows who here on the Bob Sullivan Show here on LateNightSportsRadio.com. If you have any questions or complaints about me or anything I've said, call 585-633-7487 and tell Keith that. And we'll be back here next Sunday on Bob Sullivan Show.